I've been running some tests, so I could tell you about them and so forth. Been running some tests on ridges, lines, masses, messed universe gravities, and so on. Had a pre-clear lift an ashtray about 3 feet off of a desk, simply by making all the particles of the ashtray receive the communication of gravity and make Earth receive the communication from all the particles of the ashtray. And gravity disappeared. I didn't say a mock-up of the ashtray. I said the ashtray. We can put all this down to this. Resistance to or anxiety about communication produces mass and condensation, which we graph as the no to mystery scale. See that? Refusal, negation against communication produces the condensation, which we know is the no to mystery scale. Now, you think a lot of other things ought to be in there, but that's not true. Nothing else belongs in that sentence at all. Well, we could do this by test. We could find out if this is true, and we would get one of the more curious manifestations. I've already told you, I think, about a process. If you have some person that you completely detest, you could work this process on them. If this person is somebody that you mean utterly to destroy, go ahead and work this process on. Scientology has moved up into a bracket of where one of its processes can process in reverse right down to death or insanity just as fast as it can go the other way. This is not a frightening fact, but it happens to be a true one. A Scientologist can handle life. Well, if he can handle life, he can certainly handle death. All right, what would this process be? Be one of the more interesting processes, because it would sound to the pre-clear like you were running the most reasonable process under the sun, because this is what he is doing. And therefore, this reasonable process would be acceptable by him, and he would run it. Somebody who had never heard me talk about this process, who had never heard it from anybody out in the field right now, would very happily run this process for you. Give me some things you do not have to be an ARC with. And they're just sure that there will be an end to this somewhere. There will be a stop to this somewhere. And somewhere on down the line, where all of a sudden the ridges they're accumulating and this horrible mass they're getting into and this terrific anger they're going down into, or this grief they're going down into, will suddenly alleviate. They'll think this will be a very good thing, you see. Look at all the charge I am building up here, and I'm going to spill. They never spill it. It just gets more and more and worse and worse. They go down the tone scale. Now, you must know that the tone scale is simply a description of the emotional band of the notice X scale. The notice X scale is a much bigger scale, of which we have the tone scale as a livingness manifestation of condensation. See, we put the whole tone scale, fits right in on the notice X scale at emotion. That's a fact. It fits right in there. Now, as we go below apathy, you see, we run into effort. And as we go on down the line, we run into the other minus tone scale manifestations. But the tone scale, as it was originally produced in Science of Survival, and discussed a little earlier in some other lectures, books, and so on, actually just belongs to that emotional scale, doesn't it? So he'll go right straight on down the line, and all of a sudden he'll find himself hard-packed into effort. And if you kept up this thing, he'd start to figure his way out of this. If you kept him up to this, he would get into an anxiety about the symbols, the exact meaning of the words you were using. And if you kept this up, he would begin to get hungry or worry about being eaten. And if you kept this up, he would go right on down into sex. And he would begin to be sexually excited and so forth. And he'd drop on down through there and he'd tell you it was all a mystery to him. Believe me, it would be. You can create with this process a black 5 in 2 hours out of a Thetan exterior. The process, again, is simply this. Give me some things you wouldn't have to go into ARC with. Now, the process also runs this way. It's a process. It's a death process. The first one I've ever really come up and described you. I've described PDH to you and so forth, but this is a real death process. It's much worse than PDH. Give me some things you don't have to go into communication with, produces the same result. But Give me some things you don't have to agree with does not produce the same result. Give me some things you don't have to like does not produce the same result. So, give me some things you don't have to communicate with does produce the result. And that was the isolation of that corner as the triangle is the only important thing in that triangle. All right? Therefore, you have a depth process, which produces this condensation known as the no-to-mystery scale. And this process is a very, very deadly process, but it demonstrates to us that as we decide to go out of communication with things, we decide to die. It's a very funny thing, running this process, to discover that there is another side to the communication process. Have all of the molecules in a pack of cigarettes or a ridge or in the center of Earth decide to receive a bunch of hellos and then kind of throw them some hellos to receive, but that's all simultaneous action. Have all these particles decide to receive some originated communications. They decide to receive hellos. They decide to receive okays. And you'll find black and white phenomena turning on. The old black and white processing, it goes black and white, black and white. Too much origin, and it'll all go black. So we have them receive some okays. Decide to receive some okays, it'll go white. Have them decide to receive some hellos, go black. See? Go white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black. Get the idea? But if we have them decide to receive some communications or decide to receive or perceive that a live form is around, we get a disintegration of the mass without any liability to the mass itself. It simply evaporates into a livingness. Well, this is red-hot phenomena. Discoveries which I've been talking to you about are make-and-break discoveries as far as Scientology is concerned, as far as Dianetic Scientology is concerned. With these discoveries, the problem of life might have a lot of ramifications, might have a lot of developments, might have a lot of conditions, but it certainly doesn't have any problem. Now, I've asked you to run inventing of wrongness. Interesting process, isn't it? Fascinating process. Now we're going to run communication processing, straight out. And you will find all of these other things running off automatically. The need to have a wrongness would be the need to break communication, would be the need to have a game. But wrongness and havingness are infinitely connected. If a thing is wrong, you don't want it. After a while, if you can't have something, you only have wrongnesses, and so forth. All these involvements take place. But if wrongness and havingness are intimately connected, then assuredly we would find communication and wrongness intimately connected, wouldn't we? So it is. So actually, the need for wrongness is resolved on communication processing. These discoveries, as I say, not necessarily the no-to-sex scale, where it simply describes the phenomena, but these discoveries concerning communication actually make nothing out of the problem of the human mind. There is no problem with the human mind, just a problem, how many auditors can we train? That's about all there is to it. Thank you.